Hello and welcome to another Project Diablo 2 video. I am Kordesh and today we're going to be going over the resist aura changes for the Paladin for Season 13 Betrayal. Let's get into it. Alright, so what exactly are the changes for the resistance auras? So Paladin now gets higher scaling at levels 22 plus for resist lightning, fire, and cold. And so let's go ahead and just showcase what that actually means. So generally, as you get 1 point for resist fire, you're going to get 1% increased elemental mastery. So fire mastery, cold mastery, lightning mastery, while you have this aura active. However, now going from 22 to 23, you're going to get 2 points, and you're going to get 2 points for every single additional level, which means that you get pretty good scaling. Now, a large charm gives you like 3% fire or cold or lightning, so getting 2% per level is pretty nice. So I kind of want to talk about the implications of this. So let's go ahead and jump on into the beta, and I have a character here, and I also have a defensive aura character that's like actually just a meme. So if we look at this character, you know, I have 60% fire mastery. There's a lot of different things that you can do with this character. So you could play it as a solo character, and if you wanted to do that, generally it would be very similar setups. So it's all Oradins. So this is the Holy Fire variant. So the Hand of Justice, Dragon, this should not be in a Sacred Armor. This is purely, you know, testing so that, you know, I can spawn whatever I want. Dragon here. So these aura items combine. So this level 12 adds to this level 12. So that's 24 adds to this level 12. So you have 36 Holy Fire. So what we do here is we go over to Holy Fire and we look at the synergies. So we're going to max out Resist Fire, Salvation, and Blessed Aim. So here's Resist Fire, here's Salvation, and here's Blessed Aim. So now that we have those maxed out, we have this Holy Fire pumping because we have like a level 36 Holy Fire. And then we can basically put it on any attack. Charge is generally pretty good, but Sacrifice is good for the cold variant a lot. I've seen that running around, but you can actually look up a lot of these builds, and I'll showcase how you can do that. So if you go to PD2 Tools, this will allow you to just like look at builds. So if we go here, and then we type in like, let's see, Shattered Wall, you can look up Shattered Wall builds, which is like the cold variant. If you want to look up, you know, here's a build. If you want to look up Dream, you can look up Dream. I don't know if there's any Dream. Oh, here, let me delete that. And then if I look up Dream, there's some Dream variants. So basically, there's ways to do cold, fire, or lightning. So really, whichever aura you want, using, you know, things like Doom and Shattered Wall, or using Dual Dream. Wait, this might not be it. Anyways, so why play a character like this? So this character is pretty expensive because if you look at like Hand of Justice, like Search Him, Am Low, Shattered Wall is very expensive. A lot of these items are very expensive. Now, the reason why I would play a character like this is if I was duoing with another player. So, for example, if you're playing with a friend that does Fire Golem, this is really, really useful because you innately are giving out 60% fire mastery. Like these are all just defensive aura GCs. You can use large charms if you're soloing, like that would definitely be preferable. But if you're in group play, you can actually give out lots of fire mastery while using this resist fire. So this is very useful because 60% elemental mastery works really, really well with the fire golems, specifically with Necromancer, because when a Necromancer summons their Fire Golem, they benefit all of the Fire Mastery as they summon it as like a snapshot, and then the Fire Golem itself has no Fire Mastery, but when this Resist Aura affects them, then they also, too, get that 60% Fire Mastery. So there is double dipping occurring. So I think that if you want to duo with a friend and have a really good time, you can, you know, you can run around as this character. If you look at this gear, like I'm using Zenith, so generally the other Fire Golem person would probably use the, you know, Infinity, but really you're definitely gonna need an Infinity. But I did want to showcase that this character can kind of like run around in solo. Obviously the gear is expensive, but it's pretty chill, pretty easy. You know, there's just literally a white cow map, but with Conviction, you will clear much faster and do a ton more damage. But in my opinion, these builds, generally, you're either going to just run the large charms for it or do synergies. And I wanted to mention that the 2-player, 3-player synergies with this, you know, like I said, Fire Golem is perfect. Hydra is also pretty good because these Hydras can benefit from the auras. even though it's kind of like hard to tell, they do actually benefit from resist fire, so they would gain elemental mastery and benefit. That being said, sorceresses scale really poorly with mastery, and I'll kind of touch on that in a second. So what other characters scale well? So things like the Fire Trap Assassin would scale really, really well. So if you wanted to duo this with a Fire Trap Assassin, I would highly recommend the Fire Trap Assassin having Infinity on their Mercenary, and then you just run around and the Fire Trap Assassin would do tons and tons of damage with Wake of Fire. The Exploding Arrow, Immolation Arrow, Amazon would also be very good. The Druid, the Fire Druid would be very good. Anything that's really not a sorceress. And let me showcase why. So first off, let me go back to town. So again, giving out 60% increased fire damage to the party. Now, if we go over to a sorceress real quick, this is just a generic fire sorceress, and that has just 20 in fire mastery. Just 20 in fire mastery. We have 96 elemental mastery. So with like gear and whatnot, like this is going to be much, much higher. So let's say this is like, if I had a bunch of gear, I don't really have a bunch of gear on right now. But if I did, it would probably be around, well here, we can look it up real quick. Let's see here. So if we go over here and go to sorceress, let's say we had like 50 to fire skills. So a level 50 to fire mastery would grant us, 50 is pretty high, but it would give 216% fire damage, right? So if we have 216 and we get an additional 60, that's 276 divided by 216. So it's like a 27% damage increase, right? Like it's very, there's diminishing returns on this. Does that make sense? So basically, because the sorceress gets so much elemental mastery on their own, combining with the sorceress is not good. Assassins, Amazons, any other basically elemental damage dealers are totally good with this. Just avoid the sorceress because of fire mastery. The best one by far is Fire Golem because of the double dipping. Hydra also double dips, so if you are going to do a sorceress duo with this build, I would highly recommend Hydra. But yeah, if we look at things like Amazon, I don't know if I have an Amazon made right now. Fire Arrow would be really good. Assassin, Fire Trap. Corpse Explosion on Necromancer also works, so that's kind of interesting. You could also even go like a Fire Whirlwind build with like a Flame Bellow on the Barbarian. I've seen something like that, or even stuff like Fire Claws on the Druid. There's a lot of really interesting options here, and so I just really wanted to point this out that like this is pretty good stuff. And then the last thing I wanted to mention is if you did want to, let's see here, let's get rid of this. And this, if you really wanted to juice up your, let's see here. If you really wanted to juice up your aura, you could absolutely do that as well. So, you know, we'll put on some Mage Fist, put on a Rax, we'll put on some skill rings, and then that's Seraph Sim. So now, if you look, we have a level 52 resist aura. This basically character will do like no damage, but we have 86. And I mentioned this before, but you can kind of, for some reason, Resist Fire and Salvation are the only auras that can kind of simultaneously activate. So if you look, basically, here, I think I actually need to switch these. So if I put Salvation over here, and then I'll put Resist Fire over here. So it basically goes to 112 or 86. So the 112 is when both of them are active, the 86 is when it's solo. But this is really not worth doing. You're much better off bringing 60 elemental mastery and doing a ton of damage and being able to solo the game yourself than going about this. So like I said, I'll have some sample characters in the description. Here, I could probably pull one up right here. So, you know, Hand of Justice, Dragon, Vamp Gaze, Maras, things like that. But yeah, so I'll have a basically in the description a link on like an example build. So yeah, I think the resist changes are really cool. One thing that I did request that I would love to see changed is if you look at this, it's, you know, resist fire while this is active. So let me clear this. So while this resist fire is active, we get a ton of fire resistance, and it gives 100 fire resistance. So if you look at the resistances, we just have tons of fire res, and then all the rest of our resistance are terrible. And if you go look at Salvation, it gives all to elemental damage, but a ton of all res. I proposed that the Salvation should increase elemental damage based on the investment on Salvation and Resist Fire. So basically, what I want, the end result is I want to be able to activate Salvation here and still get the same 86% elemental mastery. So now my resistances look really nice. My elemental resistances are like fixed and I don't have to worry about them. But the elemental mastery is so much lower. So I really would like for Salvation to have the synergies of the 3 resistances, increasing those elemental masteries, and Salvation to get that 2% scaling as you go. So that's what I would love to see, just because it'd be a nice minor change. Really, the defensive auras, nobody really uses them, but I did want to point out all of this information. So one last thing that I do want to mention is, again, this character is very good in party play, but you can actually run double Paladins. And so, for example, if you have if you are doing the resist fire, you can have another Paladin going Vengeance with a native conviction and just have them mostly stack the fire damage. You know, just using like flat fire damage charms, things like that. And there's a lot of different ways to do this. I mean, you know, if they want to run a native holy fire, they can do that as well. You're really going to need a conviction somewhere. But yeah, double paladins are obviously like totally fine. Even if you want to run triple paladin with one going resist fire, one going salvation, and one going conviction, that would also be pretty cool. So there's just a lot of different ways to go about it, and you really just need to think about those synergies. So that's it, and I'll see you next time.